Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Question: how would you feel about a third fight between Dillain Whyte and Derek Chisora? Because it could actually happen due to the current pandemic. Right now, these two, Chisora and Whyte, have fights scheduled against the likes of Oleksandr Uysk and Alexander Povetkin, respectively. Those fights originally before the pandemic were meant to happen this month, both on pay-per-view, both about 3 weeks apart. But looking at the current situation and potential restrictions that may be in place, remembering different countries have different things, different measures in place right now, it could be a case of Alexander Povetkin, Oleksandr Uysk. They may not be able to travel. They may not be able to train properly, get a proper camp in before facing these guys. And that could potentially result in Dillain Whyte and Derek Chisora facing off against each other. And the fact that it's been mentioned and there's been a little bit bubbling around for a couple of days now, and now Derek Chisora has commented on it, and I'll get to that. To me, at least, this seems like it's probably a contingency, and they're floating it out there publicly just to gauge the reaction. And obviously these two, with 2 fights in the book and a successful second event, which was pay-per-view, over 400,000 buys, I'm sure Eddie Hearn is looking at this going, well, we could make the best of a bad situation and have these two fight for a third fight. Remembering Derek Chisora, he lost the first fight against Dillain Whyte, very close fight. Dillain Whyte got a majority decision. A lot of people do though believe Derek Chisora won that first fight. I thought he won that first fight. The second fight, a conclusive knockout. But up until the knockout in the 11th round, Derek Chisora was well in that fight and he was up on 2 of the scorecards. So in terms of having a third fight, there is a few storylines there, and I'll get to Chisora because he reckons that he had a bit of a bum deal in the second fight because of the referee. So he says of a potential fight with Dillain Whyte, a third fight, he says, I'm better than him. I won the first fight, they gave it to him. Then in the second fight, I had a funny ref. I will push to get another fight and a rematch against Dillain, 100%. Derek Chisora's statements. And the timing of it, because obviously we're in this situation, there's no guarantees the other fights go ahead. People are obviously starting to think, well, maybe they will end up matching these two together. And I'm sure that's already been in Matchroom's thinking. And the fact it's out here now, as I sort of alluded to earlier, it's probably floating the idea to sort of gauge fan reaction, because they don't want to run an event and potentially it end up being a flop. But I think with the current pandemic and conditions, if these two end up fighting and it ends up being the first pay-per-view back in the United Kingdom, I think there would be demand for it. I think whoever goes first in terms of a pay-per-view, because there's pent-up demand, and generally if it's a pay-per-view, it's going to be a much bigger and tougher fight, hopefully evenly matched with the demand that's sort of been building up in the past couple of months through no boxing. I think there would be a bump in buys for the first pay-per-view back, and if they can end up making, say, if the Povetkin fight with Whyte falls over because of whatever reason, because of the pandemic, and same for the Usyk one for Derek Chisora, I could see Matchroom making that one in a heartbeat, Chisora and Whyte. Lots of storylines to build, and some would say that this is really the decider between the two, because some people believe Chisora won the first fight. And he was obviously having a good effort in the second one before he got starched in the 11th round. But that talk there about in the second fight, he had a funny ref. I don't remember the ref having any undue influence on the fight, but I'd need to go back and watch it. But obviously he was brutally knocked out. That was at the end of 2018. But since then, Derek Chisora has had 3 straight wins. He's riding a bit of a wave of hype at the moment. He had wins over Senad Gashi, Artis Bilka and David Price. None of them approaching world level, and pretty much Price and Spilk are pretty much washed at this point, but people are believing in Derek Chisora again, and this is what's helped land him the Oleksandr Uysk fight. Some people believe that he will steamroll Usyk, but if he was to fight Dillain Whyte again, he would probably be like the first couple of fights, in with a good chance, because I think these two, when they're fought, it's meshed quite well. The first one was a real barn burner, fought in a phone booth for the most part. The second one, Dillain Whyte tried to be a bit more tactical, a box on the back foot, and he's not a great technician boxing off the back foot. And Derek Chisora's pressure, it actually, with his volume, and he was landing shots too, he was banking rounds. 2 of the 3 judges had him up on the scorecards at the time of the stoppage. But Whyte obviously not wanting to sort of take it back to the phone booth like the first fight, wanting to, give himself another way to win. Ultimately, he did. He closed the show with a brutal left hook. And you'd have to say at this point, if they were to fight again, I mean, what are the odds on this fight going to be? What, 55-45 to Whyte? Maybe 60-40 to Whyte, something like that. But there would be a fair proportion of people who would think Derek Chisora is going to go in there with a good shot of winning that fight, despite having lost those 2 first fights. So it's by no means a mismatch, and for a first pay-per-view back, if it ended up being the first one back in the United Kingdom, I think commercially it would probably do okay, at least similar or perhaps slightly better numbers than the second fight, which was just over 400,000. What was it, 450,000? I think it would be somewhere in the ballpark, maybe a little more, maybe approaching 500,000. At the moment there is an appetite for boxing, and Whyte obviously the number 2 heavyweight in the Matchroom stable. He's been on pay-per-view. He's in the Dillain Whyte pay-per-view business. He would entertain a rematch, I think, with Derek Chisora if it makes money. And that's the thing. They're looking to make some money for all involved. Matchroom too. They want to get things back going with a bang. And if they're 2 pay-per-views that were previously scheduled with Povetkin and Uysk sort of have to be parked for now, they'll be looking at other options. And Whyte and Chisora does seem like a logical one to make. But what do you make of it? Would you want to see it again? I know some people will say, hey, I'm sick of recycled fights. But it's also one of these things that at the moment, I think we just have to temper expectations. I mean, with Joseph Parker, for example, I wasn't exactly too enthused with the names that have been sort of thrown out for him, like Lucas Brown, Dempsey McKean, and Junior Farr, because you want to see Parker fighting the likes of a Michael Hunter, for example, but it just may not be possible at the moment, and it could be. All of these promoters and different promotional stables are going to have to make the best of a bad situation, at least in the initial months when boxing comes back. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.